Hello and welcome to another SonicLAB. Today I'm looking at the MFB Synth Pro. Very kindly, a chap called Paul, who's a friend of our news editor Trev, he has one. He lives in Bath and he said, do you want to borrow it and have a look at it? And I thought, oh yeah, why not? That's great, because we first saw this, I think I saw a prototype at last Physical Super Booth. And what is it? Well, it's an 8-voice analog polysynth, which is kind of bonkers really. It's got 3 oscillators per voice, a pair of filters, 2 envelopes, a third attack, decay, release envelope, all of them loopable, 2 LFOs, and 256 memories, I believe, plus an effects, built-in little DSP effects, which is on a separate chip. It's also got a little sequencer and ARP in there as well. So quite a lot of features really. The thing that's about this is it's actually quite compact. So, you know, these are my hands, this is the size of it. Nice metal construction, little wooden end cheeks. We've got, on the back, we've got USB for MIDI and firmware and dumping memories and whatnot. Then there's actually a USB host port, so you can plug a USB keyboard direct into this. I couldn't get this to work with the KeyStep Pro, but I will try some other ones. MIDI in, MIDI out, MIDI through. Audio out, weirdly, on a stereo jack. I don't really know why that is, because that makes things somewhat inconvenient for a lot of us. Certainly, you know, it's not the end of the world, but it's a bit of an annoyance. And then headphone output on mini jack as well. Now, MFB, Manfred Fricker Berlin, they make a variety of things. I think the last thing I reviewed of theirs was probably the Dominion 1, which I really liked. It's got some very interesting features, lots of synthesis capabilities. But they also make lots of kind of small, compact, kind of techno, deep techno drum machines and sort of acid boxes. You know, that's their kind of thing. So this is very much, well, it's quite new. I don't know whether they've made a polysynth before. I think this, well, I suppose the Dominion one is paraphonic, but this is truly polyphonic. It's quite interesting. It's fairly simple on the basis of it. Let's start off with, well, let me just play a patch and I can show you sort of what sounds it's capable of. So let's have a listen to this patch here, which is a really gorgeous 3 VCO. Patch. And what this demonstrates, because the kind of really unique selling point of this is that the VCOs, because they are analog VCOs, they can be switched into DCO mode or in VCO mode. This particular sound is in VCO mode. So if I press this button, I'm then in DCO mode, and it's got a, you can hear it's a bit wonky, which is kind of what you get from VCOs. VCOs are just less stable, and in the manual they rather charmingly put it, you can switch into DCO mode if you want, if you're in challenging environmental conditions, whatever they are, you know, like maybe really hot or really cold or whatever. As it is, you do need to warm this up for about 5 or 10 minutes, and there is a calibration routine which you can press, hold and press the DCO, and it recalibrates them all. But the thing that's really interesting about this is these are true analog VCOs, analog VCFs, analog VCA, whereas the LFO and the envelopes and the effects obviously are digitally controlled and digitally sort of generated. I mean, it may be that this hasn't been warmed up for quite long, so it's not, I will say it's not always that radical a difference. Sometimes it's hard to tell, but you get this kind of smearing. I mean, and we've all seen, you know, the argument between VCOs and DCOs. DCOs are just more stable, you know, and that's great because in a polysynth you sort of want it to be in tune generally. So we've got a single oscillator. Rather helpfully, we have an oscilloscope mode. Let's start with a subwave here. So oscillator 1. Sub is a square. I'm going to come round through sawtooth, triangle, sharp, and then pulse width. And I can obviously modulate this. The routings actually, we can set the routings for each VCO separately, so we can have pitch mod and mod wave to LFOs or envelopes or whatever. The other thing that's very interesting is we've got this extra mode. Now in extra mode on VCO 1, let's go back to this. This is basically a skinny pulse width. Let's turn that down. Oscillator 2 is the same. We've got 3 octave range on the oscillators. Then we come around, and on this guy we've got the extra is set to ring. Now we can set that to be ring or pulse on this oscillator, and that is governed by the pitch of VCO 3. VCO 3, if we listen to VCO 3, I've got the extra set to noise, because we've got the option between, I believe on this it's pulse and noise. So we cover kind of a number of things. I mean, they are quite basic, but they do have a sort of sound to them. When you start stacking them up, because we've got 3 oscillators per voice, that's quite a considerable amount. But the nice things are we can do these pulses, so we can modulate. Get some really nice. Got a bit of reverb on that. Don't go very high, the LFOs, that's one thing I will say. But we get some nice harmonic shifts, and those the mod waves can be different destinations for each, or to the source of the mod wave can be different for each. So you can get some really sort of quite large, muscular moving pads, which are quite interesting. In fact, I think that first preset I played had a bit of that going on, with the waves all moving at slightly different directions. So those are the VCOs. Let's take a look at the filter. So if we come back down, so we've got 2 filters, 12 dB multi-mode filter. Let's do the old sawtooth. Got low pass mode. We've got a mix between the filters here. We've got a blend control. Modulate the VCF, and again we've got multiple sources for that, and we've got contour, and we've got multiple destination sources for that as well. Quite nice actually. And then we've got a bandpass mode and a high pass mode. We do get a little bit of drive and filter character, but when we push a bit more into them. Let's move over to the VCF2, which is the 24 dB low pass. These are OTA filters apparently. But what's interesting about this is we can set the stereo spread between these filters. So if we put the mix in the middle, hit the stereo spread, we've got stereo 25%, 50%, 100%. Let's put 100%. So we can get this kind of stereo filter. They're pan hard left and right. So if I move that there, you can hear that's on the left hand side and that's on the right hand side. Key follow 25, 50, 100%. And in fact we can create, if we take all of the, we can play the filter. Let's just do 100%. So we can create these kind of, and then we could tune these up, I guess. So we could actually have up to 5. sort of 5 distinct pitches per note. I should point out that those oscillators actually plus or minus 12 semitones with kind of quite good granularity in between them. Now, one thing that I will say for this synthesizer is, most of the routings are kind of fixed. There's no mod matrix, which makes it kind of feel a little bit sometimes underpowered or underspecified to begin with, because you just think, oh, well, I'd really like to be able to modulate, say, for instance, the level of VCO2 or whatever it may be. But I can't do that. I mean, these will CC, so you could do it via MIDI, but there is no mod matrix. So pretty much all the routings that you've got are set via these menus here. So we've also got the ability to have a poly mode. We can be in chord mode, unison mode, and mono mode. Now, this is bizarrely, this is not stored with a patch, which seems crazy. So I did a load of patches yesterday, and this part of it isn't. But anyway, back to the menu. So each menu, VCO, so we've got, we can change the mod sources for the various different parameters here for each VCO separately. Then we've got VCF settings, VCF here extra, then LFO settings. In fact, actually, we've got VCF 1 and 2. So we've got compensation, which is resonance compensation, which means we get a bit more bottom end, doesn't drop away. Then we've got LFO settings. So, there are quite a few things here, but there isn't a mod matrix. So you've got to find your patches where you can. Right, I'm going to play a few patches now. There's enough talking for now, and you can sort of maybe get a sense of what some of those sounds are like. So this patch again demonstrates the stereo-ness. I'm using envelope 3 to modulate the contour of filter 2. And the stereo mode is set to 100%, so we've got the filters hard left and right. The other thing that's quite interesting about this is when you set in stereo mode, the effects only follow the path of VCF1, so I'm not getting any of those effects here. So it's quite a curious setting. Then if I go into mono, they do. So it's a kind of slightly peculiar audio routing, but let's try another preset. It's really hard not to tune Oscillator 3 up to like a 5th or something. And create these lovely massive. The reverb's not great, but it's enough to add some lovely sound to it. Right, okay, bang through. So this patch, using kind of the 2 distinct sounds of each filter, and I'm blending between them. Now it would seem to me that this would be a great parameter to be able to modulate, and again it sort of highlights the lack of mod matrix and some of the routings that you kind of expect in a modern poly, particularly where there's a sort of digital control aspect of it. It sort of feels like why wouldn't you, effectively. And another little gripe while I'm at it, no patch names, just kind of preset 3 bank 30 kind of business, which is, yeah, I don't think that's anyway. What's this one? Okay, and these are all ones that I threw together while I was looking at this yesterday. And this is more of that beautiful, this is where it really shines, this. So I've got this kind of stereo, detuned oscillators. Kind of reminds me a little bit of soundtrack preset, but nicer. And again, we got 2 different filter voices, giving that stereo vibe, and also obviously all the effects are over that way. Well, over that way, because this is mirrored, if you see what I mean. It's kind of skinny. I don't know if you heard that. Yeah, I noticed this. This is like a high pass filter. Selena type thing, but I'm hearing these little. If you can hear them. It's nice. It's little thumps occasionally. I'm hearing these little kind of. I don't know whether you're picking that up. And sometimes on some of these voices, there's a bit of like DC or VCA thump. So it's not ideal, but it may be a firmware thing. That, you know, because the thing about the firmware, this I think is 3.7. The actual firmware, the manual states that, you know, there's going to be flanges and other effects in there, and there aren't. There's actually just, if I actually let's go to the effects while we're at it. Let's just find a voice that might. Let's try it out. So there's reverb 1, delay, reverb 2, chorus reverb, and then 3 parameters, which could really, I mean, why haven't you got the name of the parameter here? That would be, surely that would be just as easy to put in, but I guess they'll get round to that possibly. That's the thing that you find, MFB firmware is often an ongoing thing, and you know, it can be a little bit quirky. But so yeah, those 3 effects, I mean, we can't modulate any of these values. Maybe that's a firmware update that will happen, and you don't get a fully when you want wet, that's not fully wet, that's just not dry, if you see what I mean. So some quirks there. Couple more presets. If we go to my next bank down. Now this is actually I can demonstrate the unison mode. So easy to do. We'll just come up to here. We'll go into unison mode. Let's have detune of say maximum 15, and then get the voices. Now this is going to be loud. Again, we take the stereo out. Again, that's really starting to. So here we got that unison mode that enables us to get, you know, a decent kind of, well, what's that going to be? 8 voices, 3/8, 24 oscillators all stacked up, and you can get some big thunder. I mean, they're not the biggest oscillators, you know, they're not like Moog oscillators, but they wouldn't be. But one thing that's worth mentioning, these oscillators, and it says in the manual, these are discrete, you know, they're not chip-based, they're discrete components, which how the hell, well, at least that's what it says, how the hell do they get those into something this small? Bearing in mind how small this is, it's got a lot of stuff going on. Let's try another patch. So more of the same, quite angry kind of band pass with some reverb. These obviously just that's because so this highlights a fact, you know, I'm changing memories, but it doesn't seem to change the voice mode. That just seems crazy. Why wouldn't you? So you'd have, you know, then have to go back and change it back to poly and take the detune off. Very different sound, and so, you know, it's, I don't know, it just sort of feels like that should be. Again, this is using the reverb a lot. Take the adds an extra certain amount of width to it. preset 5, preset 6. It's kind of stringy. To me, that's where this synth really kind of excels, are these sort of big analogy interval type pads and lovely movement. I mean, you know, there are a number of things that we can do with this. I mean, what's weird is if we, I think I've got a patch here which is like a reset patch. So if I now let's go to the VCF 1 and take the contour to envelope 3. And we'll take that's how fast effectively it will go as an LFO, but the depth doesn't feel like it's, you know, a full 100%. So we take that one down and we'll put modulation to LFO 1. That's as fast as that goes. And these are also, I think these are unipolar, bipolar. So if I wanted to, what I would want with a square wave, particularly on pitch, is to be unipolar. So I'd have my root patch. But this is going either side of the line, which is, again, it's just a little thing, but you know, it just shows that just a bit more. If there was a little bit more work done on the firmware, I think it would be quite special. You know, I'll just improve those things. And the same goes for things like glide. So if I take this down, so we've all got these menu items here. So I'm going to hit glide. I'm going to take the value of glide up to 1. That's actually still quite slow, I think, you know, considering it goes up to 30. You know, just those sort of control law things that, and sometimes, you know, if you just want a little bit of pitch mod, you know, a little bit is too much. So there's a little bit of finesse, I think, that's missing. But some of these sounds are really quite tasty, and, you know, they really do sound very analog. And, you know, like I say, the form factor is quite astonishing for what you're getting. So it's also possible to sync the oscillators, just coming back to that for a second. So, and you can sync. You can sync 2 to 3, 2 to 1, you know, so you get that stuff. There's also the possibility of FM VCO 3 to VCO 2 or FM VCO 3 to VCO 1. So we can get, and we've got depth for that as well, dedicated depth. So we can get almost kind of FM type tones in it, quite sort of clangorous. And this is something that you found on the Dominion 1 as well. So those tones are available, and then we can obviously filter them down. Stick them in the reverb. Make them really stereo. So you can get, that's quite nice actually. There are a couple of other modes of operation, which I'll go into now, which are kind of chord mode and poly plus one. So there is sort of some multi-timbral going on here as well. Right, so you need to hang on to your hats for this one. This is the multi-timbral mode. I'm in the voice mode. I'm in voice mode mono, which means I've got 8. Now this is the cool bit. I've got 8 mono voices. They share the same effects, but each one is on a different MIDI channel, which is up from the bass one. So, for instance, on this track here, so I've just basically got white noise, which I can can change the effects level, you know, by the routing that I've got going on with the VCF1 mix. The stereo-ness is also global. Then I've got another patch here, which is actually supposed to be clocked, which clocks now when I'm set the active voice. So we've got the active voice here. So now I've got a third voice. So just showing you here. There's my white noise, there's my bass line. This is my top line, and then I've got this other little. So that's doing 4, and that's pretty cool, right? So that means basically I can have up to 8 of these, and I can create this kind of multi-timbral monster, and I'll just record it all at the you know, with a preset. Sadly not. This is where the kind of quirkiness of the firmware I think causes sort of slight confusion. I understand that, you know, small team, harder to get these things together, but unfortunately this is a bit more complicated to do. So essentially what we have to do is each time we change the active voice, so in this instance I've got this sound, I'd want to store that, so I need to basically store that in preset. I put that in preset 1, that's fine. Active voice is number 2, so that's what I've patched up. When I change that, the front panel reflects what's going on with the active voice. Same here. And same here. I'm actually doing this via, so I'm changing tracks here on my BeatStep Pro. These are all set to the right middle, KeyStep Pro rather, these are all set to the right MIDI channels. But if I want to recall this, because the voice mode is not stored in the patch, what I have to do is set the voice mode, press enter, then recall each of the active voices. So if I want the active voice in patch 1, I'm going to go preset, I'm going to load 1. So it's almost great, but it's just a bit fiddly, and it's the sort of thing that one would expect from, you know, maybe a synth in 1980, but not modern days, and that's something that would be great if they could fix. I mean, like I say, I want to be able to just hit recall patch, bang, it comes back to how I set it up, because it was quite a lot of work to set it up. I don't really want to do that every time. I suppose what I can do is I could send program changes to bring back the patches that I want, but I still need then to manually set the voice mode. But anyway, so there is a multi-timbral mode, and it is usable, though perhaps not very slick. So just another sketch I've thrown together here. I've got this sort of drum pattern, which is basically 3 voices on the sequencer, a sort of bass drum, a snare sort of sound, and a sort of hi-hatty sound, and then this kind of. It's really easy to rate these sketches. I mean, the problem is I'll probably never be able to bring it back like this again because of the way the memories work. Okay, newsflash, version 3.8 now actually adds an additional bank of presets which will recall mono voices and the assignments across the 8-part multi-timbrality. I haven't had a chance to test this, but version 3.8 will effectively allow this. So there are lots of little nooks and crannies in here. I didn't want you to kind of get the feeling that perhaps it was a one-trick pony. It does loads of other stuff besides. It's just perhaps it's not as easy to find. We've also got a sequencer, which is a 16-step sequencer, pretty unremarkable. Just 16 steps, no parameter sequencing. An arpeggiator, this is again fairly basic. Nice to have, but you know, you're going to have way better capabilities, you know, even in this, to be honest. But for some people, that's really useful, and it's stored per patch, so that's pretty cool. I guess the thing is really what this synth has is just, it does have analog character, and there's a lot of stuff in there. I think the difference is, you know, if this was only a two oscillator per voice poly, I'd say, yeah, you know, there are other options. But the fact that it's got 3 and it's analog is actually quite special, and it really excels at those big sort of 2 voices in unison, or two oscillators in unison and 1 tuned to an interval or detuned, and you just get this size which is actually quite special. Even in DCO mode, it just still has a certain something about it. I suppose the thing is, you know, if you're going to be buying a polysynth, what do you want a polysynth for? You know, some people want it for its analogness, in which case this, for this price, is good value. But if you want it for effects, routing and all other things, there are more synths out there that are perhaps less analog but have higher capabilities. It really is sort of depends up to you. I definitely haven't got through to everything on this. I mean, this was really only given to me for a few days, so I haven't gone maybe as deep as I might do with other synths. I should also point out the USB host mode. I tried to put the key step in the back of it, not enough power to run that, and I couldn't get the key step Pro to talk USB into the USB input. It just didn't seem to work. So I don't know exactly what the host mode will allow, because I just couldn't get it working with the stuff that I had. But I think this priced as around about £9.50 UK pounds. Other currencies will scroll. So it's not the cheapest synth on the market, but it's got a certain set of features that you're not going to find in anything else at that sort of price. So if I was you and I really wanted to kind of get into some analog poly, I'd try this out, maybe try a couple of the hybrid or digital things out as well, just see which works best for you, because it may well be that the Synth Pro is exactly what you need. And especially if you've got a limited amount of space, 8 voice, 3 VCO synthesizer in that space. I can't think of anything else that will do that. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. That was the MFB Synth Pro. We'll see you next time. Take care.